Hello once again, class. I have pre-recorded these lectures while late at night I've stayed up and you know recorded these because I'm afraid that come tomorrow we will not be able to take classes anymore due to the same issues that we have faced constantly. Let's move on to the second theme, major theme that we find in the novel. I will only deal with these two themes. The rest, the symbols and the images and all the other analysis, you will look for it on your own. There are plenty of materials on the internet. I will leave that up to you. So I will just deal with this for the last class, and hopefully by after this class we will be able to have the long awaited test that we have kept postponing due to the internet issues. um, if possible, we will try to have that test before moving on to the next unit. However, I want you to start reading the next text, that is Lord of the Flies. It's a simple read. It's very easy to read and to finish reading. It's a short book. So carry on reading. So the next theme that we find very prominently in the book is the theme of colonialism or the Anglo-Indian relationship. Here we see that by when the novel was published initially, it received a lot of interest and uh, from people all over the world due to the criticism of and the scathing remarks on British imperialism in India. We see that Forster's condemnation of the British rule in India rests on a deep humanist belief on the sanctity of personal relationships and a passionate hatred of all forms of authoritarianism, including imperialism. So he did not politically dislike or criticize the Britishers imposing their rule on India, but however, he criticizes it on ethical grounds. He thinks that no person or no country should have the have the guts or should have the audacity to rule another person. It is not ethically correct. So he does not think in terms of politics. In the earlier part of the book, uh, the primary concern is with the relations between the ruler and the ruled, the British and the Indians. We can see this through the division of Chandrapur into two towns. It is divided into the native section and the British section. We see that the British section, which is called the civil station, is shares nothing with the city except the overarching sky. So it is completely different from the rest of the Indian towns. All right. Even though the civil station is located within Chandrapur, the Britishers have segregated themselves. They have placed themselves apart from the main Indian population, and they have built a separate community and a separate locality for them to live in, which is very, very different from the Indian landscape where the rest of the Indians live. The civil station is, they have tried to portray it in such a way that it is a cold, sensible, and colorless place. They have built it, they have to attempted to impose a tidy and well ordered but ultimately spurious and incongruous pocket of civilization on the primitive vastness of India with which they have no contact, and the place where the Indians live, in sharp contrast with the civil station, is um, is a sprawling growth from the Indian soil, partaking something of its ugly monotony. The the beginning chapters of the book illustrate this. They say the author says that huts and human beings cannot be really told apart because it seems like they have all sprung up from the same soil. The British have tried to impose order on this kaleidoscope of India, but theirs is an order that is unnatural, lacking an imaginative understanding of the Indian condition. It is an order which can exist only by ignoring or suppressing all the untidiness of those elements of Indian life that do not conform to its pattern. So the British have tried to impose order and tidiness, but it is unnatural in that primitive landscape of India. Let's move on. The Britishers' relationship with the Indians are those of the political and social roles they play. They do not have any other personal attachments with the Indians. Apart from the political and the social roles they play, they are the rulers. So the only relationship they have with the Indians is being rulers and their administrative jobs and their colleagues, the people who work under them. So it is only a professional, or how do I say, a political and a social role. And they do not have friends, they do not have Indian friends, right? Just simply for the sake of having them. They're, they are acquainted with the Indians only in their attempt to carry out their political and their social tasks. The Anglo Indians have a deep sense of rational justice and they think of their work as a burden nobly borne, ruling Indians for the Indians' own good. So I've tried to highlight some pages, but there are so many pages that to highlight that um, I left it at the middle. So it the English are, are people of rational and moral, are people of sound, rational, and moral justice, because they think that because they were civilized, it is their job to civilize the rest of the world. And they think that civilization or what modernity brought to them is a good thing. And so they wanted to, they felt it as their burden to civilize the rest of the world. And that's what they're trying to do. It's not, they think that it is a burden that they should bear, right? We see this in passages like, I'll read out this quote: "We're out here to do justice and keep the peace. We are not pleasant in India, and we don't intend to be pleasant. We're something more, we've something more important to do." This is one such passage. And Ronnie Heaslop thinks of his work as something that is nobly born, that it is a noble work. However difficult the job, the burden may be of civilizing these savages or these barbarians, it is a noble task that he must bear. So he thinks every day he worked hard in the court trying to decide which of the two untrue account was less untrue, trying to dispense justice fearlessly, protect the weak against the less weak, the incoherent against the plausible, surrounded by lies and flattery. So he's trying to do his job well. He's not trying to cheat or he's not trying to do his job for his own advantage or for his own gain. He's really, trying to do his job really well. But the whole the whole ethics of it, of the Westerners trying to civilize the rest of the world is questionable. Generations of subjection have degraded the Indians, and their personalities have made them what they are. They are unreliable, childish, and suspicious. Of course, one moment they will be contemptuously hateful of the British, and the next moment they will try to ingratiate themselves to their British superiors. So that's how they are. And they have become suspicious, and this has made them childish as well. The Indians think collectively out of fear and hatred. The British in turn behave as a herd, rigidly cutting themselves off from the Indians. Conventions of rank and position serve as a barrier, and the British look outside at the Indians with contempt and disdain. So the Indians think collectively out of fear and hatred, uh, especially towards the second part of the book, when there was a riot, when Aziz was facing trial, right? So years of subjection have made them hateful and scornful of the British, and the British also put themselves form themselves as a herd. Remember, they go to this English club, they only associate with the British themselves, and so small form small they form a small community of uh, like-minded people, and they cut themselves from the Indians, and those who do not fit within that English community that they have formed become outsiders. Even Mr. Fielding becomes an outsider when he supports Aziz, right? So conventions of rank and position serve as a barrier, because there are these customs and these conventions that you have to follow when you're the ruler. And this forms a wide gulf between the British and the Indians, and uh, they the British look outside at the Indians from inside that herd mentality, that herd uh, community society that they have formed. They look outside at, very suspiciously look outside at the Indians with contempt and disdain. They do not. They think that the Indians are of an inferior race. Okay, and none is allowed to question the existence of the local hierarchy. The local hierarchy meaning the British hierarchy. When this is said by, I think it was Mr. Calendar. We shall all have to hang together, old man, I'm afraid. At a time like this, there's no room for, well, personal views. The man who doesn't toe the line is lost. So, if you are a British, you must you must adopt the same opinions and the same taste, the same worldview as the other British that have that are there present in that place. If you veer slightly to the left or to the right, like if you have a different opinion of your own, say supporting an Indian instead of supporting that Englishman, you will be the man will become lost, is what they believe. They say we all have to hang together. There is no room for personal views. This is the kind of society that the British have formed, especially the women. These women are suspicious. They're narrow-minded, even more so than their husbands, because these husbands, they interact with the Indians on their work. They they have a communication, at least a little bit of communication with the Indians. But these women, mm, they are enclosed within that space, that boundary of the civil station, and so they do not have close contact with the for the Indians, and they are even more disdainful and contemptuous of the Indians in Chandrapur. So, mass hysteria leads the British to uncontrollable evil. This can be seen as when Aziz was put on trial, and when Aziz was accused of raping Adela. These Britishers, they were hysterical. They didn't know what to think from, they were just, so filled with disgust and hatred for the Indians, and this lets out so much evil. There was riots, and there was just the attempt. There was no attempt at rational justice for Aziz. They were just instead trying to humiliate him in the most inhumane way, even in the court. So they let loose a lot of evil especially into the court. Forster does not question the right of the British to be in India. He does not consider whether it is right for the British to be in India or not. Instead, his main criticism of the British rule is that it is an order of force and will, not of love and understanding. He thinks that Forster thinks that, well, maybe it's right for the British to uh, to 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 establish their rule in India, but they can do this through goodwill. Again, he's a man of he's a man who values personal relationships, right? So he thinks that a good communication and a good friendship can be born between the British and the Indians, instead of this hate and fear that is um, present. So instead of force and will, there can be love and understanding between these two different races. And that is his main concern. And a lot of people have criticized him for it as well, because It seems like what Forster is saying is what is needed is goodwill and more goodwill and more goodwill. This is said by Aziz, I think. Yes, it is said by Aziz in the novel. Forster suggests this as the answer to the problem of the British rule in India. If only the British were uh, you had a little more goodwill, or if only the Indians had a little more goodwill instead of all that fear and suspicion and hatred. If there was love and understanding between those two, then all would be well, is what Forster seems to think of it. And lots of criticism, lots of debate, like I said. They severely, criticize him. And the philosophical and they severely criticize him, saying that he has reduced the imperial rule uh, as something which can be simply solved by goodwill, when it is not. When it's something as monumental as colonialism cannot be solved by simple goodwill between two people. So, however much Forster was criticized on this regard, the importance of this novel still lies in the philosophical concern. This transcends the historical document of the British Raj. Even though it's an important theme within the book of the colonialism, a much more important theme is the philosophical concern of the novel, which is the echo or the nothingness that we keep talking about. So, with that, we will end with today's lecture again. Thank you, class.